Throughout his life, Gottfried Leibniz, one of the greatest philosophers and mathematicians, who discovered the metaphysical and mathematical harmony which underlies reality in the forms of both monadology and infinitesimal calculus, cherished the hope of discovering a kind of generalized mathematics, which he called characteristica universalis. If we had it, he said, we could reason in metaphysics and morals just as we do now in geometry and analysis. There would be no need for disputation between philosophers any more than there would between accountants. We'd have this universal and formal language able to express mathematical, scientific, and metaphysical concepts. And I would argue that the CTMU actually fills Leibniz's definition of a characteristica universalis. So this is what he was seeking after, and it was fulfilled by Chris Langen. There are three characteristics which I see as needed by such a system. Number one, it unites all of the languages as relands of the same structure. So you can have this international auxiliary language on the basis that there's this that it connects all of them and shows that they have the same fundamental structure. This connects to Wittgenstein's philosophy of language, is that what we're doing in language is we have a concept and we're trying to express that to another person. So what language is at its fundament is not, words or little breaths, etc., which make little sound waves, but what it is, its fundamental essence is that concept. It is the extensional world, and so it connects the language to its universe, and thus can express all present knowledge. Nothing is lost in the CTMU. In effect, it actually extends a great amount of science, philosophy, and religion, and shows all this truth that we found over the millennia when we can't figure out how it all fits together. We got it. And 3, it serves as an instrument of discovery and demonstration because it relates model, theory, and universe. In the past, we can determine things empirically. We can, do some experiments, but we can't actually understand how the theory in our mind, the concepts and ideas, etc., relate to the outside universe. We need this fundamental ontology which relates language and universe, which says that the universe is a language which creates the reality it describes, just as the only reason why our language is useful to describe the universe is because of the mapping between the inner structure of the universe is fundamentally linguistic. So our current scientific falsificationist paradigm, which says everything has to be empirically induced, relies essentially upon what Chris Langen calls epistemological magic glue to attach its theories to its observations. The CTMU goes further and actually relates theory and observation by saying theory is mind, observation is reality, and those two are actually fundamentally entangled. Mind equals reality. There's no we can't break reality into two, or else there would be no relationship. There's no basis for a relationship even. So there's this alphabet. This is why Leibniz actually called his characteristica universalis an alphabet of human thought. That these concepts, these various metaphysical paradigms, can all be expressed in terms of our cognition. This is exactly what Chris Langen says in his metaformal system, is that the alphabet is composed of at least 2 of the 5 utility functions are actually the syntactic and telonic structure of human beings. This is how reality quantizes itself, and it's how we can relate to reality through our syntax and teleology, how our intrinsic ends and purposes. And so there are actually 3 simple equations which describe all of the metaformal system. This is Max Tegmark's idea that the universe is so simple in terms of its mathematical structure that the equations which govern our universe, from which you can derive quantum gravity, etc., general relativity, everything else, are so simple that they could fit on a t-shirt. And he predicted we'd have this done by 2068. Langen had this done 2058, I think. Langen had this done by 2018, and possibly even earlier, but he published it in 2018. There are 3 equations. We have M equals LM UM. So the metaformal system relates through a language which has the same structure, and a universe which has the same structure, and those 2 are equivalent. It quantizes in terms of an intrinsic language which relates the conspansive semi-model, how reality evolves, and the linear ectomorphic semi-model, how reality exists, and that is quantized in terms of an alphabet composed of tellers and syntactors, a grammar which describes how reality evolves over time, and a surface structure of what is represented to the beings within reality in the reality self-simulation. There's this deep structure, all of this, and then there's a surface structure, which is what is actually visible. And definitively, from the CTMU, we have attained the conceptual machinery of Leibniz's famed calculus ratiocinator. And indeed, Frege was right to view his logic as a universal language of concepts. So this is extending modal logic. This is modal logic, model theory, etc. All these logic are combined in this meta logic, which describes and creates the reality that it's referring to. Predicate logic especially is needed to maintain the intelligibility of not only mere concepts, but of reality itself as well. Reality is always quantized in terms of these 1 zeros, yes or no. It's this information which is organizing and informing how reality ought to have this spatial extension, have energy organized. And this is what Leibniz says, that the interconnection or accommodation of all created things to each other brings it about, and each to all the others brings it about that each simple substance has relations that express all of the others, and consequently that each simple substance is a perceptual living mirror of the universe. This is perfectly expressed the principle of hology, that every point has this same structure of this alphabet of human thought, of this characteristica universalis, embedded within every point in space and time. The CTMU, or characteristica universalis, or metaformal system, reveals that reality is a beautiful system, not only more beautiful than we imagine, but more beautiful than we can imagine. So the hope of, and just a side note, I'm going to close with this, my favorite conspiracy theory in the world comes from Kurt Gödel, one of the greatest logicians of all time. I think he is usually rated behind Aristotle and Frege, but that's arguable. That Leibniz actually basically discovered the characteristica universalis in the 17th century, and essentially it's been redacted, it's been hidden by the people who are in charge of his records. And this actually is not that crazy, because Leibniz left about 15,000 letters, 40,000 pages of other manuscripts which have never been published, and Gödel tried to assemble everything he'd ever written about the characteristica universalis, because even though he believed in undecidability, he also believed in this fundamental framework which could explain human cognition and metaphysics, morals, etc. All of this. This was his hope. People think that undecidability decides against this. So basically, what Gödel is saying is that Leibniz basically discovered the CTMU in the 17th century. If that's true, that's wild. But I think he probably got further, because he definitely, something in those letters and manuscripts, etc. were had some sort of bearing on this. So I hope eventually those are released. But anyway, this was just a fun conceptual video. Let the light shine forth the darkness. May the peace of our Father in heaven be upon you. Like and subscribe. Peace.